guys, I'm Kat and welcome back to my channel. I look like a tired grandma. Take these off. So today is kind of an exciting video in a sense. There's a kitty. Let me just see if I can fix that. Is that better? I can't tell, my glasses are off. But anyway, today we are going to talk about how it has been a year since my thyroid surgery, which is completely crazy. Actually, today I think is the 5th, the day that I'm making this video, but the day that this is going to go up is going to be March 16th, which is the year anniversary of my thyroid surgery. So I was going to wait until I think May 15th to do this whole video because that would be the year mark of taking levothyroxine, but I wanted to do it for the, like, when it all kind of started, kind of. All of the videos that I made on my thyroid experience will be linked in a playlist in the description below if you're interested in watching those, I guess. But in this video, I'm just going to talk about what it's been like. I will do some kind of like going back and explaining some of the story, but not like completely, and then just kind of everything in between and how it's been through the year of everything, and stuff like that. So let's get started. This is going to be a long video, so not that any of my videos are short, but still. So first I'm going to start with pre-surgery. I'm going to try to touch on the very beginning of how everything started before and just not like take too long. So the way this started was a few years ago. My sister actually had to get I believe the left side of her thyroid completely removed because she had a nodule on her thyroid that was making her have hyperthyroidism, which hyperthyroidism is when your thyroid is producing way too much thyroid hormones, and it can actually be a really bad experience. But she was having a bunch of thyroid issues. So during that experience, I developed this lump right here, which you can kind of see where the scar is. It's kind of hard to tell with the lighting. Hold on. So you can kind of see where the scar is right here. And so I developed this lump right here. And I thought, because me and my sister are really close, I thought it was like just like a sympathy thing. Like I was just like feeling her pain, but also I'm a singer, so I thought maybe right here was swollen. I don't know. So I didn't really think anything of it. So she goes to the surgery, she gets a thyroidectomy, she gets the left side of her thyroid removed, everything's fine. She doesn't have to take levothyroxine because she's a bitch. But anyway, so a couple years later, like I think a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, I still have this lump in my throat and it's actually getting bigger. And I was at work and one of my coworkers, I was at work and I noticed that it was big. It was like swollen, and the air quality that day was really shitty, and typically when the air quality was really bad or when it was cold, it would get swollen. And so I asked my friend if she could see it, and the only time that you could see it at this time was if I did this. You would see this lump, and you'll see it in past videos if you want to take a look at them, but you would see a lump. And so she's like, yeah, I can see it. You need to talk to someone about that. What is that? And I told her I don't know what it was. It's just been there. And I shared with her that my family's had thyroid issues in the past. So I went and I told my parents. My dad told me if I didn't make an appointment to get it checked out, then I would, then he would do it for me. So I went and I got an appointment, and this was back, I think, in either October or November of 2017. And I went just to a basic clinic, and they did some basic tests, you know, like they typically do. And they estimated that it was a thyroglossal duct cyst. So basically that is a birth defect. So when you are a developing fetus, when your thyroid gland stops, I believe it's at the top of your throat, and it's kind of like anchoring your tongue in a sense. So when the hyoid bone is created, I'm making a really terrible explanation of this, but basically these ducts are created for your thyroid so your thyroid can move down your neck to where it's supposed to be positioned in the throat during development. Typically those ducts disappear when you're born, but sometimes the ducts are left behind and they leave little pockets, and when those pockets become filled with fluids, they become cysts. And what's really crazy and what's sucky is that a thyroglossal duct cyst looks very similar to a nodule or a cyst or a goiter growing either near or on your thyroid. So it was kind of one of those things that you didn't know what it could be, but he thought that it was a thyroglossal duct cyst. So I had to go get an ultrasound. So flip to the ultrasound. I went and got an ultrasound. I told the lady that he said that it was a thyroglossal duct cyst. She said, no, it's not that. It is on your thyroid. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's great. Cool. And so I had to go see an ENT or an endocrinologist. And luckily, since my sister had thyroid issues a couple years before that, I knew what doctor I was going to go to. So I went there, they did the ultrasound, we did a couple tests, and they determined that it was a cyst, kind of like this big. Probably a little bit smaller because this looks huge and the thyroid is inside the body. But it was kind of the size of a golf ball, maybe a little bit smaller. Maybe a ping pong ball. Or like a beer pong ball, or whatever. And it was growing on the right side of the thyroid and kind of like in the middle of the thyroid and kind of. But also, so for women, it is very normal to have nodules on your thyroid. It is completely normal and not something that you have to worry about. And usually thyroid nodules are squishy and kind of already filled with fluid, but it's when they become solid is when they get really concerned. I believe it's like, oh my gosh, I have statistics somewhere. Let me go grab my notebook because I have actual like information that is really good. So one second. Notebook. So as I said, typically thyroid nodules are not solid. They're very squishy. But when they become solid, that's when they become concerned because I am out of breath because I ran down the stairs. Anyway, when they become solid, that has the potential of them becoming cancerous. But only 5 to 10% of nodules are actually cancerous. It is actually really rare. Where did I write it down? It's 95% of nodules are non-cancerous. So typically they're benign, they aren't cancerous. So it is really worrisome when you find out that a solid nodule can be cancerous, but typically they never are. And if they catch it early, they can take it out. But I'm gonna read from my little information here. Nodules are 3 times more common in women than men. 30% of 30-year-old women will have a thyroid nodule, and 1 in 40 young men has a thyroid nodule, which is really, really, really interesting. And I like to suggest to people that maybe have been experiencing certain, like, symptoms, like, for example, chronic fatigue, cold intolerance, dry or brittle hair and skin and fingernails, memory issues, extreme depression, high cholesterol levels, or slower heart rate, and the list goes on and on. Now, of course, these things are connected to other diseases and sicknesses, but it doesn't hurt to get your thyroid checked because, and I'm gonna read this because I don't want to misinform. So it could be, all these things could be a symptom of an underactive thyroid or hypothyroidism, which is actually dangerous. And so although rare, severe, untreated hypothyroidism can lead to a life-threatening condition called, and I don't know how to say this, myxedema or myxedema, a type of coma that occurs when the body's level of thyroid hormones becomes extremely low. Approximately 50% of people who develop myxedema die from the condition if it's diagnosed too late. So basically, if you're having these symptoms, if you're really concerned, if you develop a bump or a goiter like I did in my throat, I would suggest go get it checked out. It's better to be safe than sorry because you don't want to die, basically. So yeah, I like to suggest that because, but anyway, after, all that happened, and they told me that I did have other nodules on my thyroid, but I had one solid nodule that they were concerned about, and they were more concerned about the solid nodule than the cyst, because the cyst was just a cystic nodule. It was just a nodule filled with a lot of fluid. It wasn't really that life-threatening, but the nodule that was solid could be potentially cancerous, and thyroid cancer does run in my family, so it was kind of worrisome. He was, of course, concerned about the cystic nodule because if it got bigger, it would start to push into my trachea and make it hard to swallow, which will make it turn to where we're going now. So we did set up a biopsy thing to get a biopsy to see if it was cancerous, but the only problem with biopsies is they're a really big gray area because you could stab into that nodule and get a piece of it, and we'll say it's not cancerous, but you could have literally stabbed next to the area that's cancerous and not get any of it. So biopsies are kind of a gray area. So he decided, you know what? I want to take it out anyway, so we can just do the biopsy while you're under. So I was like, all right, cool, sounds good, fine. In between all of this waiting, the cyst did start to get bigger, and it did start to make it difficult to breathe. The issue was eating was scary because swallowing was nerve-wracking, even swallowing liquids, because the cyst was causing this obstruction in my throat. So if I took too big of bites, it would get stuck and I would choke. And that happened a couple of times and scared the shit out of my boyfriend and my mom once. I think mostly just my mom. I can't remember if it was my boyfriend or if I just told him the story. But anyway, my mom and I were at Applebee's. I was eating a piece of steak and I started to choke, and my mom said that I started to change colors, and then eventually I coughed it up because the body is great. The human body is amazing. But anyway, it also made it hard to drink certain liquids. Mucus would get stuck in my throat, which would make me sick. And sometimes, like, I find myself, I would have to swallow really hard like this. And sometimes I still find myself doing that because it was a whole, like, a long time of me having to do that. And so, and with air quality and stuff, it would swell and then it would go down. It would swell, it would go down. It would make my throat hurt. It would make my voice really hoarse, which I already have a deep voice anyway, so it was kind of hard to tell the difference. But it was just causing a lot of issues. But luckily, the nodule wasn't causing the thyroid issues. It was just there. Unlike my sister, her nodule is her nodules were causing her to have hyperthyroidism. So I was lucky enough to not have that issue. So we go in on March 16th to get the surgery. Now, this is the first time I've ever gone under. This is the first time I've ever had this experience. So the word scared does not really describe the feeling that I had, because I had this fear of waking up during surgery, of the anesthesia not working, but me waking up, but them not noticing, which I think that they have, like, things to save from that, and I think they can tell through heart rate and other stuff. That's what the anesthesiologist is meant for. So it's kind of a crazy phobia, but I was scared. This is the first time I ever went under and had surgery like that. And typically with fear, I don't let it take over my other emotions usually. Usually I'm quite good at controlling my fear and controlling it, putting me in a really bad place. But this time it was really hard to deal with that fear because it was so overwhelming, and I was trying to pretend that I was okay, and I could tell that my sister, who knows me better than most people, could tell that I was having a really hard time trying to quell this anxiety and fear that I was having. So she was trying to make me laugh and stuff like that, and I had my boyfriend and my sister there mostly, which was really comforting, and a lot of my family members came, which was really very, very cool. But I remember the lady that went to give me the IV, I don't think that she was a well-seasoned person that gave the IV, or she was really nervous because my mom was watching her like a hawk. But she stabbed me, I think 6 times in this arm, another 6 in this arm, and then another lady who was a nurse, probably for much longer, she put one in my hand, went right in, done. It was great. But this other lady, she kept stabbing me, and so I was in pain because it was hurting, of course, because you get stabbed continuously. It hurts. But I was also scared, so I cried, which I am usually very, very good at not having an emotional breakdown like that in front of my mom or my dad, unless it's them pissing me off or making me sad. Then, of course, I'm going to cry. But when it has to do with something like that, fear or anxiety from something else, I typically don't like letting the people that I love see that because I don't want to hurt them. But this was one of those moments that I was scared. I was genuinely, unapologetically terrified, and I tried, and I kept asking questions. I'm that person that is so annoying and will just ask 1,000 questions, and I think it's kind of a stalling tactic, but also kind of a comfort tactic. And my dad, he's a lot like me. We both have dark humor. I like to call it gallows humor, which I think that's an actual thing. And so we make really dark jokes, which is not necessarily great for other people. But anyway, so I get the IV, and then, I have all my fluids after getting stabbed 1,000 times. I'm laying there. I'm actually pretty comfortable, a little sleepy and hungry because you can't eat anything. And then they start to take me back. And I remember the drugs that he gave me for a minute. I was scared. But then the drugs that he gave me was a muscle relaxer and is supposed to relax you, not just mentally, but physically. So I felt great, and I started to get really tired. And while they're taking me back, I remember going into the room, and it was very cold. I don't know if they mean to keep it cold in there, but it was very cold. I see the operating table, and I remember this male nurse asked me if it was okay if he helped me get on the table, which was fine because I'm kind of short and the table was tall, so it was kind of hard for me to get on there. And also, I'm all drugged up, so yes, help me. I remember laying down, and I remember the anesthesiologist asking me how I felt, and I told him that I was having a hard time breathing, which he said that's normal because of the muscle relaxant. And then they put the mask on my face. And I remember, usually when I have a hard time breathing, I go into anxiety mode, but this was the first time that's never happened in a long time. They put the mask on me. I remember looking up and then waking up after that. And I remember I looked at the clock, and I remember making the nurse laugh because I looked at the clock and I said, whoa. And I kept fading in and out of sleep. They kept waking me up, and this was when I started to feel the anxiety because I'm high on anesthesia, I'm drugged up from all the other drugs, I feel kind of nauseous because of the anesthesia, and I'm trying to not puke, which I didn't, which I'm really happy about because my sister did, but I didn't, so ha! And then I remember the anxiety because I'm drugged up. I can't see straight mostly because I'm not wearing my glasses. I feel nauseous. There's people around me that I don't know. I was in one room 1 minute, and then I'm in this room the next minute, and I'm kind of getting anxiety. I feel like I'm gonna have a panic attack. And then I see my doctor, and seeing someone that I recognized in that state was really comforting. And I do remember him trying to tell me stuff about the surgery and other stuff, but I don't remember exactly what he said. I do remember him saying that the nodule wasn't cancerous, it was benign, so I was okay. Everything else I don't remember, but luckily he did go and tell my boyfriend and my family, so they knew what he was saying. After a while, after I was awake for I think about an hour, they took me back to the recovery room to my family. And I remember sitting down, and I remember I couldn't talk very much, and everything was kind of almost overstimulating because people were talking and being loud and being crazy and all this crap, and I thought I was going to throw up. So I was just kind of being quiet, trying to observe and trying to collect myself. You know, you're not going to puke. There's going to be one goal today. It's not puking. So I didn't puke, which was great. And I will actually put the picture of, because my sister, or I think my sister took a picture of me, or I took a selfie, I can't remember, but I look so pissed off. And it makes sense because I just got cut into, and I'm drugged up. I am hungry, and I don't feel good. So after that, luckily they didn't have to take out the other half, because usually if they do find cancer in the thyroid, they take the whole thyroid out. So the difference between mine and my sister's operation is she got her left side removed, so she still has her whole entire right side of her thyroid intact. I, on the other hand, had the entire right lobe removed, but also most of the left side removed. So I don't have as much thyroid left as she does. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. After that, they let me go home, and I go and stay with my boyfriend for the 5 days of recovery, which was really very, very nice and very comfortable. And he took care of me really well, and I remember there were a lot of times where I would be fine 1 minute, and then I'd get really dizzy. Even a couple of days after that, I'd get dizzy, and sleeping was something else, because I couldn't sleep normally because it hurt, but also it would burn. Like, this part would burn, and the inside of my throat would burn, which is because they put a tube down your throat so you can breathe, which I don't know if they did that, I can't remember, but my throat hurt, and this part would burn, and of course they gave me the pain pills for it, which I would only use the pain pills if it was a kind of pain that I couldn't handle, and that ibuprofen wasn't help, and that if I couldn't sleep. Because I don't like taking high-grade pain pills. I don't like doing that. It makes me nervous, so I usually avoid it. So I would only take them on occasion, and I wouldn't take as many as I was supposed to. I would take one. I was supposed to take two, but one knocks me out, and so I was afraid to take two. But they really worked, and I used an ice pack a lot. That would help me sleep. And so it was really nice. I remember getting home, I couldn't talk very well, and I was really groggy. I remember I got home, my boyfriend helped me lay down, and I remember I was out for the count. And I got up, and I was actually hungry, and I was afraid to eat anything too large, so I ate, I think sherbet, and I think mac and cheese, I believe it was. And then I remember going to sleep, and those 5 days were interesting. I remember the first day back at work was something else. It was really it was more tiring than I thought it would be, and painful. And, you know, because my job, I work in an adult store, I work in sales, I talk a lot, so it was kind of painful to talk a lot. The bandage was really uncomfortable. I remember wanting to take it off, and I remember I was able to take off one layer, but then leave on some of it so it could heal. Then I remember taking off that other layer and seeing the sutures, and it was kind of gross and bruised, because I bruise really easily. But I felt really special, because when I went to go get the stitches out, they told me they could. The first time my sister went to go take her stitches out, they couldn't. They had to leave them in. So, I apparently heal really quickly. I heal like a mutant. So it's like, I don't know, but I healed really quickly. I didn't bruise as much. I didn't throw up. It was actually a pretty good experience. My doctor was great. The nurses were amazing. It was a great experience there. After that, after surgery, getting back into normal life and watching my scar heal, which is really cool, and it's healed so much in the year. On around, I think it was either May 15th or May 16th. I can't remember if it was my sister's birthday or the day after my sister's birthday, because her birthday's the 15th. No. We're getting too far ahead. So after surgery, I had to go to post-op, which is basically a week after surgery. You go in and they make sure that everything's okay, that you're fine, how recovery is going, stuff like that. After that, I had to wait about 6 weeks. I believe it was 6 weeks or 6 months. I think it's 6 weeks to go back in for another checkup, because 6 weeks is when, I can't remember, it's not 6 months. I don't think it's 6 months. 6 weeks is when it gives your thyroid enough time to reboot and start to make the hormones like it's supposed to after all the trauma that it's been through. So after that 6 weeks, I went back in, I got a blood test, and then on May 15th or May 16th, I got a phone call, and they told me that I would have to start taking levothyroxine. So when you have to take a thyroid, a Synthroid, or a thyroid hormone supplement, it means that your thyroid that is left over, or your thyroid in general, isn't producing enough thyroid hormones. So I have hypothyroidism. And it's been a ride. It's been something else. I take 100 milligrams of levothyroxine, and I think a lot of it is because I think the difference between mine and my sister's is she still has a full lobe left over, and I don't. So that's kind of what it is. Where was I going to go? So what's interesting about a thyroidectomy, a partial thyroidectomy, or a lobectomy, whatever you want to call it, or subtotal, I don't know. Usually they leave enough of the thyroid to produce enough without having to take a thyroid supplement. But 20% of people that do go through that operation do have to take a thyroid supplement, and I happen to fall into that 20%, which is great. And you can actually watch a video or videos back in the past of me talking about this experience of not wanting to take a pill for the rest of my life, and I knew I would. And I think it's because out of my sister and I, one of us didn't have to. One of us that has a thyroid issue doesn't have to take levothyroxine. So it had to be one of us. One of us had to. And so I knew that I would have to take levothyroxine. And now I take it every day. And I have been asked what it's like. And let me tell you something, it's been a ride. I've mostly noticed changes more than anybody else, but the things that I've noticed the most is the cold intolerance. I cannot retain body heat anymore. I am always cold. I sleep under, I think, 7 blankets, and I am always cold. Now I have 2 speeds. Either I'm too cold or I'm too hot. There's no in between, but usually I'm too cold. I have to layer so many jackets, and even if I layer like 5 jackets, I'm still freezing. So cold intolerance. The gift of that, though, is I can take hotter showers now. I used to not be able to take very hot showers, but now that my body doesn't retain body heat, I can, which is great. Another thing that I've noticed is the chronic fatigue. This has been something that I've noticed the most, and my boyfriend told me that that's one of the biggest things he's noticed is the chronic fatigue, because he told me that even if it's like I sleep 8 hours a day, I still wake up as if I haven't slept at all, or if I have a day off and I sleep literally all day, it's like I didn't sleep at all. It's like I'm exhausted, like I had a really rough day, I went and worked out, and I didn't sleep the day before, when I haven't done all of those things. Like, I could be here, sitting here watching TV all day, and feel like I did so much shit when I didn't. So the chronic fatigue has been a thing. My periods haven't changed that much. They still fall on the normal days. The only thing that has changed is I get cramps now. Never used to get cramps, and I bleed heavier than I used to. There was a few months where I was having 2 periods in 1 month, but I think it's because I fucked up my dose really bad, and I missed a couple pills, so that could be why. And what else have I noticed? I wrote them down, and I can't remember them. I think I threw the paper away. For me, a lot of people haven't noticed this, but my emotional control is really hard. I used to be able to control anger really well and choose what was worth my anger, and now I have a really hard time doing that. So I'm quick to anger, and I'm quick to frustration. My depression has gotten a little more intense, but it's always been that way, but my anxiety also has. I'll be laying there and randomly feel like I'm going to have a panic attack for no reason. My hair has become dry and brittle, and it doesn't help that I bleached it and dyed it a blue-green color, so there's that. My fingernails do break, but not as much, and my skin, oh my god, okay, so that has been one of the most frustrating things for me, because I used to have really oily skin. I used to have oily combination skin, so I could wear matte foundations and I could do all this, but now my skin is so dry that I can't wear a matte foundation without wearing a really hydrating primer and a really hydrating moisturizer. And I used to not be able to use like lotion or cream moisturizers. I could only use gel ones, but now if I use a gel one, it dries out my skin. So I have to use a lotion one, which the original Olay, something like the hydrating Olay cream has been working really well for my skin lately, and I think it's CeraVe, I know I'm not saying it right, but the CeraVe hydrating facial wash, that has been the first wash that I have found that doesn't dry out my skin, because there have been times where I'll find hydrating face washes, but it still like pulls out hydration, and this is the first one that hasn't done that, so I'm really excited about that. And I do use the Mario Badescu facial sprays, which I need to get more of that, but it's really frustrating. I didn't like dry skin before. I hated it when my skin felt dry and like tight, and now it's much worse, so I hydrate and hydrate and hydrate. Fragrance bothers my skin more than it used to, but my skin was always sensitive. And another thing that got worse is my lactose and fucking tolerance. So there have been things that my body is intolerant to now that it kind of was before, but not really. So gluten, kind of. If I eat too much gluten, I can feel it and it makes me sick. So I have to be careful with how much I eat. Lactose and dairy has been one of the most painful ones, because I've always been lactose sensitive, so if I ate too much, I would get sick, but I would still be able to eat it without getting sick. But now, if I eat even something that has lactose or dairy, or even like a derivative of lactose or dairy, it makes me sick. If I eat cheese, if I eat ice cream, if I eat one of these cookies because they have dairy in them, it's going to make me nauseous. But I do it anyway, and I ride that roller coaster, and I take Lactaid, because I cannot give up dairy. It's very hard for me. Although there are a lot of dairy-free, lactose-free ice creams and milk and chocolate milk and foods that I do like, but cheese is one of those things that they just haven't figured out yet, because I feel like every dairy-free, lactose-free cheese is gross. So once they figured that out, I'm more than willing to figure that out myself. But that has been something that has become worse ever since my thyroid issues. But luckily, it's only been a year. It's only been a year, and I have been told that for some people it takes years to get used to it, to find the right pattern, and to figure out what works for you. So if you're like me, who you have hypothyroidism, you take levothyroxine, and it's just this big old roller coaster of things that you're having a hard time figuring out, just give yourself some time, and give yourself the space to be able to figure that out, because I know sometimes for me, I have what I like to call a Wonder Woman complex, where it's basically, I think I can handle anything, and if I can't handle something, I get so down on myself that I fall apart, and I get really depressed. But you have to understand, this is your body. You only have one body, and you may think you can handle something, but your body knows better. So listen to your body and do what's right for your body, and I need to start developing habits of doing that and doing what's better for my body. In winter, it's really hard for me to get active and work out because it's fucking cold, and I already have a cold intolerance now anyway, so it's really hard for me to do that. But now that it's getting warm, I want to start getting into things that are really good for my body physically, mentally, and emotionally, because I need to start taking these steps to take care of myself, because as I said, I only have one body and I need to protect it. And so yeah, so there you go. This video is going to be very long, and if anybody watches it with how long it is, I would be super surprised. But it's going to be an interesting time. I guess for some reason in my head I keep thinking, oh, I'm going to take levothyroxine for a while, then I won't have to take it anymore. But in all reality, unless they Star Trek some freaking technology that's going to help my body regrow a thyroid, I'm going to be taking levothyroxine my entire life. I'm going to have to get my blood taken every 6 months to make sure my levels are okay. And you know what? The first time I ever thought about taking a pill for the rest of my life, I thought it was going to be a pain in the ass. But really all it is I wake up, I take my levothyroxine, and then I live my life. Like, you know, that's just kind of how it is. And in the grand scheme of things, my autoimmune disease is not as bad compared to other sicknesses and diseases and situations in the world. And so I feel, even though it's kind of a shit end of the stick, I feel like it's not as shit end of the stick as some situations. And so I do feel very lucky for that. And I guess it's me and my dad that's having issues because he has a heart issue and now he's got diabetes. So it's like, I guess it's me and my dad. But I mean, it is what it is. And you do what you have to do for your body and for yourself and to protect yourself. And I am kind of scared and excited to see what's going to happen and how I'm going to handle it. And I luckily have people around me that are going to help me with that. So yeah. But it has been a year since my thyroid surgery and everything, and it's been quite the year of just a big old roller coaster, but it is what it is, and I don't know. It is who I am now. It's a part of me. It is the new normal, and I'm okay with that. And yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to hear any more about my experiences, I do have a checkup on July 8th about my thyroid, so I guess I could make a video about that if I have to. But I'm gonna try not to make so many videos about my thyroid again. But yeah, so it's been a year, and I have enjoyed it and hated it at the same time. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to hit that subscribe button, hit that subscribe button, I guess, if you so decide, and don't mind this terrible camera angle that I didn't realize was that bad until just now. And thank you for joining me in this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a beautiful night. And if you're someone who has thyroid issues, I would love to hear about it. I really would. And I'm gonna go eat my pumpkin cookies and maybe make food, and I'm gonna watch the new episode of Shadowhunters, and yeah. So I hope you have a wonderful day and a beautiful night, and this is Kat signing off. Bye.